Detective Burke, we want to send you undercover into Harrison as a prisoner.
At night, in a deserted Los Angeles apartment, Detective Louis Burke breaks protocol by entering alone, driven by the need to avenge his partner's murder. He quickly fights off several thugs using his kickboxing skills, then draws his pistol and moves deeper inside. In one room, he discovers several dead bodies before coming across a closed door. When he opens it, he finds only a doll. Suddenly, the psychotic killer Sandman appears, stabbing Louis and throwing him aside. Louis fires back swiftly, killing Sandman. One shot into the nightmare, or so he thought. This is Death Warrant.
Death warrant.
16 months later, Louis returns from a mission to a warm welcome from the police. Shortly after, he meets Tom Vogler and government officials who offer him a new assignment. Ben Keene briefs Louis on an undercover mission to pose as a prisoner in Harrison Prison and investigate a series of murders. The case is sensitive, as public exposure could jeopardize the governor's re-election campaign. Louis is chosen for his reputation in undercover work, and only mission insiders are aware of his true identity. Amanda Beckett will assist him, posing as his wife and acting as a liaison. Louis hesitates to accept the mission, but outside, he learns Amanda has just graduated from university. Although she lacks practical experience, she is confident after topping her class. With few alternatives, Louis asks Amanda to find a list of known serial killers who were inmates at Harrison before making his decision. Days later, Harrison Prison receives new inmates, including Louis in disguise. They are greeted by Warden DeGraff and his deputy, who demand silence while explaining the rules. To test the inmates, DeGraff drops a peanut shell. One inmate tries to pick it up and is punished for breaking the silence. Meanwhile, Louis remains still, refusing to react. Later, during a health check, Dr. Gottesman notices Louis has an unusual blood type. After the inmates leave, Gottesman quickly shares this information with a nurse. Meanwhile, Louis receives his prison ID and supplies and meets Hawkins, a prisoner who ignores his introduction. Back in his cell, Louis finds a radio on the bed. His cellmate, Knefk, demands payment for touching it. Louis refuses, explaining he has no money. In response, Knefk pulls out a hidden weapon, but Louis quickly turns the situation around, forcing Knefk into submission. This confrontation is Knefk's way of welcoming Louis. Louis then settles into the lower bunk. That afternoon in the prison cafeteria, Louis crosses paths with Hawkins once again. Tensions quickly rise as Hawkins clashes with Perez, a powerful Mexican gang leader. Louis acts fast, disarming Perez's weapon, but Perez responds with violence, punching both Hawkins and Louis. Louis fights back using his kickboxing skills, sending Perez flying and nearly sparking him. Full-scale fight. The chaos ends abruptly when Warden DeGraff arrives. He orders Perez to meet him later and warns Louis that trouble will not be tolerated. DeGraff also points out the frequent victimization of black inmates. Before leaving, Perez issues a chilling threat against Louis's life inside the prison. Afterward, Louis sits with Hawkins and several other black inmates, who caution him to stay close to his own group and be wary of trusting anyone. Suddenly, two white inmates, Keel and Kennedy, call Louis over. They boast about being killers and flaunt tattoos that list their victims. That night, Knefk offers Louis a homemade drink and warns him that helping Hawkins puts him in danger. When Louis asks about the prison murders, Knefk denies any knowledge and signals that the subject is off-limits. The next day, Amanda visits Louis wearing work clothes that seem out of place for a prisoner's wife. She promises to be more careful in the future. Amanda reports that the victims were all attacked on the head, suggesting the killer is likely an inmate rather than a guard. She also discovers the name of the latest victim, Alvin Barrett, a detail Louis plans to use with his cellmate. Louis asks Amanda to send cash to help him gather intelligence inside the prison. Though hesitant, Amanda agrees, fully aware of the danger Louis faces. Determined, Louis leaves the visitation room. Meanwhile, Ben holds a meeting with Amanda and Tom, immediately rejecting Amanda's request to send money to Louis. Tom's wife, Helen, arrives with drinks. Since leaving the hospital, Helen has avoided asking about Tom's work. Later, while Louis is mopping the laundry room, Perez and his gang launch an attack. Louis kicks Perez, but soon faces chains wielded by the henchmen. A fierce fight breaks out. Eventually, Louis overpowers Perez and shoves one thug's head into the washing machine. The following day, Louis receives Amanda's money hidden inside a book. He approaches Hawkins again, seeking information about Alvin's death. Most of the black inmates in the cell resent Louis's presence. Inside the cell, Hawkins claims ignorance, but suggests Lewis talk to a man named Priest for the truth. Soon, Lewis ventures into the prison's deepest, most isolated area, rarely visited even by guards. This is where Priest's henchmen, a group of transgender inmates, reside. Lewis finds Priest on the phone. When Lewis questions Priest about Alvin's death, Priest demands money before sharing any information. After receiving the cash, Priest reveals that Alvin's cellmate was Marson, who works in the prison clinic during curfew. Priest warns Lewis that meeting Marson will require more money. That night in the clinic, Lewis observes DeGraff bringing in an inmate on a stretcher. While mopping, Lewis accidentally drops a bloodstained box and asks Dr. Gottesman about it. Gottesman says it contains medical waste. Later, Lewis confronts Marson about Alvin's death. Marson explains that Alvin was not a hardened criminal or gang member. When Lewis presses for the killer's identity, Marson initially refuses to answer, but eventually admits that a guard was seen at the murder scene after Lewis threatens to force him to take the illegal medicine he sells. With his crucial lead, Lewis lets Marson go. After receiving the tip from Priest, Lewis immediately calls Amanda. He explains that Alvin's cellmate was too afraid to speak, which makes him suspect that prison guards might be involved. He urgently needs access to the victim data still stored inside the prison. During the call, Lewis shows a brief hint of affection toward Amanda, but cuts the conversation short. Then, he asks Priest to help him obtain the key to the archive room. Soon after, Hawkins is caught near the archive room, pushing clothes and trying to smuggle a homemade drink. As a guard tastes the drink, Lewis suddenly appears from behind a basket and slips into the archive room unnoticed. While searching through files, Lewis finds Alvin's name marked with the code SL. A noise alerts a guard, so Lewis quickly hides in the ceiling. Blood drips from a wound, but Hawkins cleverly covers it with a cup, keeping Lewis concealed. The next day, Amanda visits Lewis again. He explains that the SL code relates to victims who had no criminal records, gang affiliations, or racial ties. Lewis asks Amanda to meet a hacker named Tisdale to decode the code, but instructs her to keep this secret from Ben. Amanda and Tisdale locate the code in the prison system, only to find it password protected. Tisdale promises to crack it within 2 days. That night, Lewis meets Marson at the clinic. Marson reveals that he knows the truth about Alvin's death and asks Lewis for protection. Lewis agrees, but warns Marson to remain calm around the guards. The following day, Priest's henchmen warn Lewis that 2 people plan to kill him that night. Meanwhile, Tisdale cracks the system using the password Morpheus. Unfortunately, the file is deleted remotely, but Tisdale manages to print the data before it disappears. Amanda reads the file and immediately contacts Lewis. The data shows medical tests proving all victims were healthy and drug-free before they died. Amanda suspects Ben knows more since he has access to this information. She warns Lewis to be careful, fearing she might be the next target. That night, while the prison sleeps, Keel and Kennedy attack Lewis's cell. Keel assaults Knefk, and Kennedy stabs the mattress where Lewis usually sleeps. Lewis, prepared, hides underneath and fights back fiercely. He defeats the attackers, but Knefk dies in the struggle. Guards arrive and arrest Lewis. Soon after, Lewis is taken to isolation and beaten by guards. Warden DeGraff demands to know why Lewis is there, but Lewis refuses to answer except to insist that he did not kill Knefk. Frustrated, DeGraff beats him again. Meanwhile, Priest's henchman who warned Lewis about the attack is visited by Kennedy, suspected of leaking the plan. Kennedy kills him with an ice pick. Later, Keel visits Marson in his cell, asking about Lewis. Marson denies knowing him, but Keel already suspects otherwise. Without hesitation, Keel douses Marson with gasoline and burns him alive. The next day, Amanda visits Lewis again, but is now under DeGraff's suspicion. She undergoes a thorough search, even having to strip. Meanwhile, Lewis is told to shower because Amanda is waiting. When they meet, Lewis tells Amanda about the ice pick attack. As Amanda begins to explain her findings, Lewis teases her, and their tension turns intimate. In the prison yard, Priest talks to Hawkins about their fallen henchmen. Hawkins insists they must help Lewis. Unbeknownst to them, Keel and Kennedy overhear the conversation nearby. That night, with Hawkins's help, Lewis blew open a hidden door in the clinic. The cabinet contained human organs taken from the victims. The next day, the prison buzzed as new inmates arrived. Lewis was stunned to see Sandman among them, alive despite their last deadly encounter. That night, Lewis was ambushed in the bathroom, handcuffed, when Sandman appeared to torture him with a knife. Sandman revealed that Lewis's cover was blown and warned that the inmates would now hunt him down for being a cop. He spared Lewis, wanting him to suffer before the final kill. Back in his cell, everyone now knew Lewis was an undercover officer. Hawkins approached, asking why Lewis was there, but Lewis remained silent and only asked for help. Hawkins refused and walked away. Meanwhile, Amanda visited Tom's house and revealed that the prison case involved human organ trafficking run by guards with Ben's help. Then Tisdale called, giving Amanda the real culprit's address. Suddenly, Tom hung up, revealing that he was behind it all. When Amanda tried to leave, Tom pulled a gun and confessed that he had sent Sandman to stop Lewis because Lewis threatened his illegal trade. Tom explained that Helen needed a liver transplant, and they had struggled to find a donor. Desperate, Tom teamed up with Dr. Gottesman to obtain organs illegally. What began as an effort to save Helen quickly turned into a lucrative operation targeting criminals, which Tom justified without guilt. Helen arrived and saw Tom holding the gun. Amanda seized the moment to accuse Tom of murder before escaping. Helen, shocked by Amanda's words, was left speechless. Back in prison, a guard told Lewis that Sandman wanted to see him. Lewis tricked the guard into entering his cell, where he triggered a trap that shocked and killed the guard. Lewis then took the keys and made his escape. Enraged, Sandman unlocked all the cells, unleashing inmates to hunt Lewis. However, DeGraff caught Lewis and locked the doors again while Hawkins watched. DeGraff took Lewis to Dr. Gottesman, intending to kill him. Suddenly, Hawkins and Priest arrived, giving Lewis an opportunity to grab DeGraff's shotgun and knock him out. Lewis then defeated Kennedy with his kickboxing skills. In a tense room, Lewis demanded to know why they were helping him. Before anyone could answer, Keel burst in and attacked. Lewis fought back and killed Keel. They quickly fled, taking the elevator. Meanwhile, Gottesman attempted to escape, but was caught by freed inmates ready to kill him. As they neared the elevator exit, Hawkins was shot but survived. In the kitchen, Hawkins urged Priest and Lewis to leave him behind and find a way out. DeGraff arrived, following Hawkins's blood trail. Just as DeGraff raised his shotgun, Priest returned and shot DeGraff, saving Hawkins. Shortly after, Priest met with Lewis to discuss plans for his escape from the prison. Suddenly, Sandman appeared, killing Priest without hesitation before vanishing once again. Unable to find Sandman, Lewis challenged him to a fight. Sandman threw a pipe wrench at Lewis and struck him repeatedly. Despite the blows, Lewis managed to kick the wrench away, but Sandman disappeared once more. When they clashed again, Lewis narrowly escaped death from a cutting machine and turned the fight in his favor. Sandman then threw Lewis down, an act witnessed by the other inmates. Outside, backup forces arrived to control the riot and arrest the prisoners attempting to escape. Sandman attacked Lewis again, using shards of glass to wound him. Though weakened, Lewis fought back with his kickboxing skills. Seeing Lewis struggle, Sandman tried to throw him into a cremation chamber. Suddenly, Lewis rose and kicked Sandman inside. Sandman escaped, cheered on by the other inmates. Finally, Lewis delivered a brutal kick that drove Sandman onto iron spikes, ending the fight and killing him. The prisoners fell silent and cleared the way for Lewis to pass. Outside, Amanda waited as police secured the area. Lewis emerged carrying Hawkins, who needed immediate help. The film closes with Amanda and Lewis leaving together, sharing a kiss. So the moral of the story is, if your prison has organ-stealing doctors, psychotic killers who won't stay dead, and inmates fighting with peanut shells and washing machines, maybe it's time to ask for a transfer.